Despite what some late-night hosts might think, superheroes haven't been just for kids for generations. As we grew up, our superheroes grew up with us. With superheroes firmly in the mainstream, there have been a few moments in the MCU that might have been a bit much for our younger selves. Let's take a look at some MCU moments that might not have been for kids. Earmuffs, kids. But before we get into these MCU moments that will make you shield your young one's eyes, subscribe to CBR and ring that bell to join our notification squad so you never miss any of our MCU videos. The Eye Scanner. By the time the first Avengers movie hit theaters, there had already been 5 MCU movies. Of those 5, Loki was the only villain to survive and was head and shoulders above the rest of the rogues gallery in terms of charm and deceit. It was only natural that he'd be the villain that would bring the Avengers together. For the Avengers, Loki wanted to rule one of the 9 realms, and if it wasn't going to be Asgard, Midgard would have to do. To do that, he would need a few things. First, the Mind Stone from Thanos. This was an alliance that didn't work out. He'd use the Mind Stone to control Dr. Selvig and Hawkeye to get the Tesseract and make a portal generator to allow the Chitauri to invade Earth. Hawkeye tells Loki he needs an eyeball for a retinal scanner and a distraction. Loki gives Hawkeye both by taking out the eye of his target in the most public way possible with a handheld nightmare device during a fancy party. While we don't see the device do its work, the devilish grin on Loki's face while it does is downright unsettling. The Propeller. One of the strengths of the Marvel Cinematic Universe is that it's treated every film not just as a superhero movie, but each in their own genre. For Captain America: The First Avenger, the genre was the adventure serial of the 30s and 40s. Super soldier Steve Rogers squared off against the Nazis' super science arm, Hydra, and its leader Red Skull in a swashbuckling adventure filled with retro future super weapons and cool devices. Captain America reflected the idealism of the heroes of the time. He's noble, upstanding, and protects the innocent against those who would do them harm. With all of that, we tend to forget that he does that by punching bad people really hard. Perhaps one of the most jarring moments comes in the climactic battle in The First Avenger, when Cap climbs aboard Red Skull's plane bound for the United States full of Arnim Zola's Tesseract-derived superweapons. More than a few Hydra agents meet their end in the battle, whether it's falling out of the ship or during fights on board, but there's one fight that stands out. Cap finds himself on an escape pod that's been released fighting with the Hydra pilot. When the pilot loses that fight with the First Avenger, he ends up falling into the giant propeller that drives the small craft. Ouch. Yeah, ouch. Bloodbath. The Marvel Cinematic Universe slipped the surly bonds of Earth with its first fully cosmic adventure in the forms of Guardians of the Galaxy. The wisecracking team of misfits occupy a world of aliens and wild settings that include Ego, who isn't a planet with a face, but a person in the movie. This is a larger-than-life setting in an already larger-than-life superhero universe. This called for a larger-than-life villain. That came in the form of Thanos' lackey, Ronan the Accuser. In the comics, Ronan is a complicated political figure, the member of the Kree Accuser Corps. He's so good he actually becomes the Accuser. In that role, he's fought both with and against some of Marvel's greatest heroes. In the movie, he's a disgruntled veteran of the Kree Nova War, not willing to let things go, agreeing to steal the Space Stone for Thanos in exchange for the ability to get his revenge on the Nova Corps. Ronan runs afoul of the Guardians of the Galaxy. In order to show us exactly how evil he is, we're introduced to Ronan by having him emerge from a ritual substance bath. While we don't immediately know what the substance is, we shortly find out that he accuses a Xandarian, that's the home planet of the Nova Corps, with his hammer. That's when we find out that the Kree Accuser has been bathing in the blood of his enemies. Yeah, now that's dark. Tahiti. For Marvel's Phase 1, the heart of the cinematic universe was the affable S.H.I.E.L.D. agent Phil Coulson. Whether being faced with the cutting wit of Tony Stark or the god of thunder himself, Thor, Coulson was the unflappable right hand of Nick Fury that managed to bring Earth's mightiest heroes together. That's what made his death at the hands of Loki during the Avengers so tragic and sad. Of course, there's a truism in comics that says no one stays dead in comics except Uncle Ben, Jason Todd, and Bucky Barnes. Of course, Jason Todd came back in 2005, and we know what happened with Bucky. When the MCU made the leap from the silver screen to the television screen, Coulson made the leap from dead to still alive. For the first season, all we knew about his miraculous recovery was that Tahiti was a magical place. The truth, however, turned out to be so much more disturbing. Using stolen Kree technology and blood, Coulson's brain was reactivated while he was awake, begging to be left dead. Tahiti, as it turns out, was the terrestrialized alien host Integrative Tissue 1, meant to revive fallen Avengers. The process was such nightmare fuel that they had to imprint the image of a tropical paradise in Coulson's mind. Now that we've seen it, we'd like a little of that tropical paradise for ourselves, please. Yeah, thanks. The Car Door. Marvel Studios has done an amazing job of translating the different parts of the comic universe into their cinematic one. So now the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man fights side by side with Doctor Strange and the Guardians of the Galaxy against the Mad Titan Thanos. For their grittier city block level heroes, they turned to streaming service Netflix to tell stories with more adult themes. First up was the man without fear, Daredevil. One of Daredevil's biggest foes is the crime lord Wilson Fisk, aka Kingpin. In the Netflix series, we don't even hear his name for the first few episodes. And when we're introduced to Vincent D'Onofrio's Kingpin, he seems almost demure. That is, until a Russian gangster manages to embarrass Fisk in front of his beloved. What happens next would introduce viewers to the raw brutality of the Kingpin when he has a private conversation with the Russian mobster. It's a beating so brutal we can't even get into it here. Let's just say we never want the Kingpin to get the door for us, huh? This scene, along with the amazing one-shot hallway fight in Daredevil, set the tone for the Netflix Marvel series and expanded the Marvel cinematic landscape to eventually include the Punisher, who could fill this whole list himself. Jigsaw, anyone? Yeah, that was gross. The Librarian. Doctor Strange brought magic to the forefront for the first time in the MCU, and with it, a cast of magical characters, including the otherworldly Dormammu, Doctor Strange's biggest foe. The ruler of the Dark Dimension has always been one to manipulate the people of our dimension to pave the way towards taking over ours. In the comics, that comes in the form of Mordo trying to siphon off power from the Ancient One to the Dark Dimension before being thwarted by Doctor Strange. In the MCU, it's through a disciple of Dormammu, Caecilius. Magic names are a mouthful. Caecilius wants a little bit of the Ancient One's longevity, and he plans on doing that by enacting a forbidden ritual that'll open the world to the Dark Dimension. To do that, he has to get his hands on a ritual which is locked away in the Sanctum's secret library. First though, he'll have to go through the Librarian. The poor Librarian. Our first introduction to Caecilius is him doing just that, by beheading the Librarian with the magic energy the sorcerers wield. It's a jarring introduction to how brutal and determined Caecilius is in his effort to gain power of the Dark Dimension. The Nervous Investor. AntMan has been one of the lighter entries in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, with Paul Rudd taking on the role of the second Ant-Man, Scott Lang, alongside Michael Douglas's original Ant-Man, Hank Pym. Hank Pym in the comics, who's both Ant-Man and Yellow Jacket, is a bit of a dark personality with some bad personal relationship issues. The MCU went a different way with its take on the tiny hero. Yellow Jacket takes the form of former Pym partner Darren Cross. Cross plans on selling equipment powered by the particles. That's the fantastic element that allows things to shrink and grow to the highest bidder, which is why Hank needs Scott to steal it back. Darren Cross demonstrates his evil and the power of the technology he has for sale in the time-honored tradition of super science bad guys. Someone at a meeting of buyers that includes agents of Hydra expresses doubt that the thing being sold will actually work. It's like asking for it to be demonstrated on them, which is exactly what happens. Unfortunately for the buyer, Cross hasn't managed to master the use of BIM particles, and the skeptical buyer is left as a small pile of goo that's cleaned up with a paper towel. It's a harsh fate that underlines exactly how dangerous the technology Cross is selling is. Good thing Scott Lang was on the case. The death of Tony's parents. One of the central figures of the MCU's Phase 2 and 3 has been the brainwashed childhood friend of Steve Rogers, Bucky Barnes. While Captain America was frozen in the Arctic waiting to be discovered by S.H.I.E.L.D., Bucky was being programmed by Hydra to be their assassin. When Captain America becomes one of Bucky's targets, it's Cap's efforts to save his friend that reveals Hydra's influence on S.H.I.E.L.D. and brings down both organizations. This isn't the only time the on-again, off-again frozen soldier turned program assassin would throw a wrench in the works of the Marvel heroes. While the Avengers debate over whether or not the Sokovia Accords are a good idea, former Sokovian Special Forces agent Zemo uses Barnes to drive a wedge between the Earth's mightiest heroes. While at first it seems like Zemo is using Cap's loyalty to his friend as the wedge by framing Barnes for the UN bombing. But the truth is far darker. Through surveillance tape, why was that camera there? Zemo shows Tony Stark that Barnes killed the Elder Starks. It's not that it was an assassination that makes it so disturbing, but the cold and impersonal way in which he goes about it, and the sound of Stark's mom pleading makes the scene unnerving, breaking the momentary truth that Stark and Rogers had managed to form and ending the Avengers, at least for the time. The Extremis tests. The driving force of the Marvel Cinematic Universe has been the pursuit to replicate the super soldier process that created Captain America. The results are the Hulk, Luke Cage, and a lot of experiments that didn't end up going so well. While many remember Iron Man 3 as the time we almost got to see the Mandarin and Iron Man's technological rival Advanced Idea Mechanics, or AIM, in the movie, there was an attempt at creating super soldiers in the form of the unstable Extremis, an adaptation of the well-received Extremis storyline from the comics. A shell-shocked Stark dealing with the aftermath of a world with aliens and Norse thunder gods has to confront a former rival who's turning war vets into walking bombs. The Extremis formula in the comics works by treating the host's entire body as a scar to be replaced. In the movie, the energy in the Extremis formula overheats the body, causing the victims to become unstable. It's this instability that makes the Extremis so unsettling. We get to see the Extremis in its early trials, where the unstable formula literally burns the victims from the inside out. We hope no one was watching the movie while battling heartburn, huh? It almost makes up for not giving us the real Mandarin. Almost. The upside down drowning. While the Mad Titan Thanos holds the title as the only one to go toe-to-toe with the Avengers and win, he's not the only one who's managed to best Earth's mightiest heroes. Zemo managed to bring an end to the Avengers. He didn't do it with a super suit or an army of henchmen for the Avengers to beat up. Instead, he attacked the bond between them by using Steve Rogers' loyalty to Bucky Barnes and that rather unfortunate run-in with Tony Stark's parents we mentioned earlier. First, however, Zemo needed the incriminating tape. His first plan was to get the tape from a former Hydra agent using his own skills as a colonel in Sokovia's elite tactical squad, EKO Scorpion. That's to say, he hung the Hydra agent by his feet over a slowly filling sink. Unfortunately for Zemo, Hydra agents are known for taking their own life when captured, so the agent didn't end up giving Zemo what he wanted. The agent manages to get out one last "Hail Hydra" before the water covers his face. It's a chilling testament to the devotion of both men and a signal for how far Zemo will eventually go to get his revenge on the Avengers for the death of his family. What do you think? Did we miss any moments in the MCU that might not be for kids? Gamora off a cliff. Ah! What's your favorite of the darker moments? Let us know in the comments section below, and don't forget to subscribe to CBR for more MCU videos like this one. Thanks for watching.